Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm checking out the Eachine Revenger55. This is a brushless micro quad with a very interesting design. We've got circuit boards everywhere, and I think the idea of this one is that it can be flown indoors with these prop protectors, but it can also be flown outdoors as well because we've got brushless motors. And I think this prop protector can be removed if I'm not mistaken. Just look at all these different screws that have been used here to get different heights for these protectors yet. But the camera comes along here at the bottom, and obviously that strut is going to need to stay in. But yeah, you could remove these protectors and just fly it outdoors if you like. I think I might be having a go at that at some point. But yeah, in order to get it in this really small form factor, the camera has to come down here because there's just no room there. Look at that. These props here, they are almost touching each other in the center, so actually quite a clever design, I think. So the motors, they are 1102 15,000 kV motors. The props, they are 1535 4-leaf, and you get given some spares in the package. And just look how this is constructed here. We've got all of these stacks of things here. Now I want to mention before I go any further, actually this one doesn't have an on-screen display. I know that is sometimes a deal breaker, so I'll mention that now. So why have we got all of these circuit boards? Well, actually it's mostly the ESCs. So these bottom two here, both of these are ESCs, and they're 2-in-1 6 amp ESCs, so actually one board stacked on top of the other. So 6 amp with a 10 amp burst means that you probably want to stick with a 2-cell battery, and it comes with a 2-cell battery here. It's a 400 milliamp 30C. Now that's not a huge C rating, but because we don't have an on-screen display, it should be okay. I would recommend one of those other Eachine batteries, the 450 milliamp 80C ones, but then you might struggle to mount it. You see, we've got this board underneath here, and I've used a rubber band, but they do give you a Velcro strap, which I couldn't figure out where you were put, so I'm just using a rubber band there, and you can see that battery just fits over there. But if you use one of the flatter ones, you might struggle to mount it, so I'm going to be using this stock battery. I think it's going to be okay. We don't have an on-screen display, but we do have a beeper, a voltage beeper, which is very useful because it's a small model and it can be used as a lost model alarm as well. So the camera, we can change the angle of it because it's on this mount here, and it says that it is 600 TV line. It's a CMOS cam. We've got a button on the back there, and that can switch between NTSC and PAL on a short press, and then a 2-second press will flip the picture. I actually had to do that on this one because the camera was upside down, but not too much of a problem. So then you can see there we have got the USB port for the flight control. It's actually an Omnibus F3 flight controller. They call it a tiny cube, but yeah, it's Omnibus F3 with Betaflight 3.17 installed on it. And then up the top here, this is one of the XSR E, I think they call it, but it's not an E. The E stands for Eachine. I believe FreeSky call it the XSRM. And it's a D16 receiver. As you can see, it looks like an XM Plus, but it's actually got its own firmware, I believe. And this one has come with the international firmware on it. But there is a S port on here, so you could flash it with the LBT firmware. I don't think there's any firmware for the original EU firmware, so it's just LBT and international there. But yeah, like I say, it's come with the international version, so if you're running LBT, you'd have to re-flash it. Then we have got a bind button here, and the only sort of pain with this really is the antennas, but they don't really get in the way of the props with this prop protector on, so I'm just going to leave them like this. But yeah, I guess they could have raveled them up and put them inside, but you might have less range with that, so I'm just going to leave them out here. I'm not sure what the solution to that is. And then as we've run out of space, this is the VTX on the side here, and it's just using a dipole antenna here with a load of electrical tape. This is a 25 milliwatt VTX. It's 48 channels, so we've got a button on there, and it's going to be a long press to change the different bands and a short press to go through the different channels. So yeah, 48 channel on there, and yeah, this is a little bit loose. It's just on some sticky tape there, and yeah, I'm not too sure about that, but there's nowhere else for it to go. So let's take a look at some of the other stuff that you get given in the package. So we have got the spare props there, so you got 4 of those, and then we've got some rubber bands and screws as well. So the screws are going to be for the propellers, the rubber bands for underneath here. Then, like I say, we got given this Velcro strap. It's nice, but I'm not sure what we do with it. And then we've got another sticky Velcro pad. I imagine that's for going on the battery, but I'm not going to be using that. And I think there's another one of those in here somewhere as well. So we have got a little Phillips screwdriver and an Allen key as well, which is nice. Yeah, so another Velcro pad there to go on the other side. Then we've got these instructions here. So XSRE manual. Yeah, so if you want to flash the LBT firmware, then you would have to tap into that S port there, get one of these little connectors, and then connect it to a servo wire and put it in the back of your Taranis. So yeah, actually it does come with different receiver options. You can see there, so the normal D8 FR Sky if you don't want to mess around, but then D16 here, Fly Sky, DSM2, DSMX as well. Nice box too. But yeah, I don't know whether they've teamed up with FR Sky. They must have done. But yeah, it's just the XSRM rebranded with an E on it. So you get this really nice manual with it. So very similar to the Aurora series. So I think it's the same team that were involved with all of that. And you get the usual specs and tells you everything that you need to know. It's got the Betaflight setup in there, so I'm not going to go through that. The only thing that I did in Betaflight was changed the voltage on the warning there, so it was set to 3.4 volts. I think I took it down to 2.9, otherwise your beeper's going to go off straight away. And I think I bumped up the Super 8 to 0.8 as well. So yeah, nice manual there. So that's about everything. Let's go and take it for a fly. Okay, let's go for a takeoff with this one. Very noisy model, starting off in angle mode. The first thing that I'm looking for is any drift. Kind of difficult to tell with this wind, but I think it's alright. Those antennas are a bit annoying coming out the side. It looks so weird. So loud though. Not a huge amount of punch either. I think that's to the probably the C rating of the battery. That's the punch. Yeah, not a lot of punch at all. Probably daft for me to try acro. Well, let's try it anyway. Not too bad actually. Yeah, it doesn't feel as powerful as some of these other 2S models. There goes Lewis Hamilton again. He loves it round here. Showing off to his mates. Yeah. I mean, it's cool for the size, but yeah, it's definitely not as powerful. I can hear the beeper going off at the top of the throttle as well, so probably better to use a higher C battery, but no brownouts here. It's struggling with the wind. It's actually flying alright though. I have to keep it in fairly close. It's so tiny. I think this might be a nuisance indoors with this amount of volume coming from the motors. So I got my warning set really low, like 2.9 volts. and it's still going off at the top of the throttle, so there goes the alarm, and it's probably going to die pretty close to that, so let's come in for a landing. Okay, here is some DVR footage taken from my Fatshark Dominator HD3s, and at first I thought it was flying fine with acro, and then after a couple of rolls I noticed that the back end was giving way, and this is a characteristic of models that have an unusual weight distribution. Can you see it there? It's just pitching back, and then once it started it kind of kept doing it. One thing I will say, it was a very windy day, but when we have all of that weight underneath the flight controller, so we've got the battery, we've got the huge stack, and then we have got these prop protectors on the outside as well, which flight controllers aren't really usually tuned for, then we start getting this. Now, I do think that it can be tuned out, and usually unconventional weight distribution requires unconventional PIDs, so these are the stock PIDs, and I did manage to tune it out, but more on that a little bit later. As for the camera quality, I didn't think it was that great. I thought it was a little bit blurry, and yeah, the dynamic range wasn't too great on it. Alright, it's a really tiny camera, and it's CMOS as well. Also, because it's using a dipole antenna, the FPV reception was probably good for about 50 to 80 meters. I think that could probably be improved if I could figure out how to have the antenna go vertical, but then it's going to go through the prop. So if it's going to go vertical, it's going to have to go down. You can see here that I'm really struggling with the quadcopter pitching back. So I would say in its standard form, keep it in angle mode with these prop protectors on, but what I'm going to do is remove those prop protectors to see if it is improved any, and I'm also going to change some of the PIDs as well. So the flight time, you're looking for just about 3 minutes, or just under 3 minutes, and then it's time to come in for a landing. That beeper was working though, because you know, I could hear it going off just nicely. So anyways, let's get back to the bed. Right, so I've gone and removed the prop protectors, and it now weighs 47 grams, which is closer to what they said it weighed in total. Now, because some of these screws here go through the prop protector as well as the frame and then into the motor, they are too long to use when you remove the protector. However, the screws that were in here and here, those ones are okay because they're going through this piece of plastic for the camera. So I've just got 2 screws going into the back and then 3 at the front, and that should be fine. My only concern really is what to do with this now, because that could easily go up into the propellers, so I might have to run it through the battery here, so maybe underneath the battery. Anyways, let's see if it flies any better like this. So the answer is no, really. It did improve the flight characteristics a little bit, removing the prop protectors, but I was still getting the issue. So that's when I realised I needed to spend some time tuning this through the PIDs, and I spent about an hour doing it. And this is what I came up with. So I drastically reduced the I, that was the majority of the issue, and then I also reduced the D as well because it was feeling a little bit woolly and not really quite dialed in, and then I also upped the P gain a little bit as well, and then I tried to trick it out. So I'm doing fast rolls here, I'm doing back flips, forward flips, and then I couldn't get it to replicate the pitching back movement anymore. So definitely the extra weight underneath there, I guess, kind of like acting as a pendulum underneath the quadcopter and giving it some really strange characteristics. But like I say, I managed to get it dialed in the end, so you're absolutely welcome to try out these PIDs if you've got this model. Now, I think a lot of you are probably going to be asking, should I buy into this? And the answer to that really is it depends. You see, a lot of people tell me that they burn out brushed motors. Some people are telling me that they're burning them out within like 8 flights, which I've never experienced, so I don't know what I'm doing differently to everyone else. I've got a QX95 that's coming up to being like a year old, and it's still on the same motors. It gets flown a lot, it gets abused, and the motors still haven't burnt out. And I fly it aggressively, so I don't know what I'm doing differently, but when I compare my successful brushed quadcopters like the QX95 and then put it against this, power-wise, probably about the same, I would say. And it's also much quieter. It gets a longer flight time, so up to a 6-minute flight time with my QX95. Alright, maybe I shouldn't be comparing it to the QX95 because that's a bigger model than this, so the comparable model for this would be a Tiny Whoop, which, again, very similar amount of power, quieter. But again, you know, if you are burning these brush motors out, then this is the way to go. But we're talking a 3-minute flight time and a lot of noise being kicked out. But there you go, that is my review of the Revenger55. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.